My name is Trevor, I'm 38 years old, and until last month, I thought I had the perfect marriage. 12 years with Melissa, building a life I was proud of. When my grandfather left me his inheritance, I never imagined it would reveal who my wife really was. Her email from her supposed yoga retreat changed everything. I've found someone worth my time. I've moved your inheritance into my personal account. My calm reply hid what she couldn't see coming. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you want more stories about justice served cold. I met Melissa at a charity gala in downtown Seattle. I was 36 at the time, focused on building my career as a software engineer at a promising tech startup. That night, I wasn't looking for love or even company. My friend Curtis had dragged me there, insisting I needed to network more. But the moment I saw Melissa across the room, something changed. She wore a simple black dress, nothing flashy, but she carried herself with a quiet confidence that immediately caught my attention. "That's Melissa Parker," Curtis whispered. "She works for that big marketing firm downtown. Way out of your league, buddy." I rolled my eyes at him but couldn't stop stealing glances her way. When our eyes finally met, she smiled. Not the practiced social smile you give strangers, but something that felt genuine. An hour later, we were deep in conversation by the bar, the charity auction and networking opportunities forgotten. Melissa was intelligent, witty, and seemed genuinely interested in my work. By the end of the night, we'd exchanged numbers, and I called her the very next day. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant where we talked until the staff started cleaning up around us. 3 months later, we were inseparable. Our courtship was something out of a movie. Weekend trips to the coast, surprising each other with small gifts, and staying up late talking about our dreams. Melissa supported my career ambitions, and I encouraged her as she climbed the corporate ladder at her firm. "We're a power couple in the making," she joked, but there was truth to it. We pushed each other to be better, to reach higher. After a year of dating, I proposed during a hike to our favorite viewpoint overlooking the city. The ring wasn't enormous, but it was the best I could afford at the time. Melissa cried when I got down on one knee. "It's perfect," she whispered as I slid it onto her finger. "You're perfect." Our wedding was small but beautiful. Just close friends and family at a vineyard outside the city. My grandfather, Harold, was my best man. He'd raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 12, and he was the most important person in my life besides Melissa. "You found a good one," Harold told me at the reception, watching Melissa laugh with my cousins. "She reminds me of your grandmother. Strong, smart. Don't ever take that for granted." I promised him I wouldn't. Harold had been married to my grandmother for 54 years before she passed, and their relationship was my model for what marriage should be. The early years of our marriage were everything I'd hoped for. We bought a modest house in a good neighborhood, traveled when we could afford it, and built a life together. Melissa thrived at her company, eventually becoming their youngest marketing director. I moved from my startup to a larger tech company, where I led a team developing security software. Every anniversary, we'd reminisce about how we met and marvel at how lucky we were to have found each other. On our 5th anniversary, Melissa gave me a watch engraved with the coordinates of the charity gala where we first met. "So you'll always remember where our story began," she said. Throughout these years, my grandfather remained a constant presence in our lives. Sunday dinners at his house became a tradition. Harold adored Melissa, and she seemed to genuinely care for him too. When Harold's health began to decline 3 years ago, Melissa was supportive, helping me coordinate his care and visiting him regularly at the assisted living facility. "Your grandfather is the most remarkable man," she'd say. "You're so much like him. That's what I love about you." Harold had built a substantial nest egg over his lifetime. He'd been a shrewd investor, turning his modest earnings as a college professor into an impressive portfolio. He never lived extravagantly, preferring to save and invest. "Money doesn't make you happy," he'd tell me, "but it gives you options. Always remember that, Trevor." When he told me he named me as the sole beneficiary in his will, I was touched but uncomfortable discussing it. "I don't want to think about that, Grandpa," I said. "It's not about dying," he explained. "It's about legacy. Everything I built for you. You're my boy. I want to make sure you're taken care of when I'm gone." The inheritance wasn't something I counted on or planned for. I loved Harold for who he was, not what he could leave me. When he passed away 6 months ago, the grief was overwhelming. Melissa was my rock during those dark days, handling funeral arrangements and making sure I ate and slept. The reading of the will revealed that Harold had left me $3.8 million, his house, and his entire investment portfolio. It was far more than I'd expected, and it left me speechless. This wasn't just money, it was my grandfather's legacy, the result of a lifetime of hard work and smart decisions. "He wanted you to have options," the attorney, Raymond, told me, echoing Harold's words. As I processed this inheritance, I began noticing subtle changes in Melissa. Nothing alarming at first, just small shifts in behavior. She became more interested in our finances, asking detailed questions about the inheritance, and when we would have access to it. She suggested upgrades to our home, a new car, and exotic vacations. "We deserve to enjoy this," she said. "Your grandfather would want that." Maybe she was right. Harold had always encouraged us to enjoy life. But something about her sudden interest in the money made me slightly uneasy. Still, I dismissed these feelings. This was Melissa, my partner of 12 years, the woman who had stood by me through everything. If I couldn't trust her, who could I trust? Looking back, I should have paid more attention to those early warning signs. But love makes you blind, and I was still grieving. Our home life continued much as before. We cooked dinner together, watched our favorite shows, planned for the future. Melissa would curl up against me on the couch, and everything felt right with the world. "I'm so lucky to have you," I would tell her, and she would smile and kiss me, and I believed with my whole heart that our love was unbreakable. I was so wrong. About a year before Harold passed away, I started noticing subtle shifts in Melissa's behavior. Nothing dramatic enough to raise immediate alarms, but enough to create a persistent unease I couldn't quite shake. The changes were gradual, like water slowly eroding stone. Melissa began taking more work trips than usual. Her marketing position had always required some travel, but suddenly she was gone almost every other weekend. When I asked about the increase, she brushed it off. "The company's expanding," she explained, packing her overnight bag with new lingerie I'd never seen before. "These trips are critical for landing new clients." I believed her because I wanted to. But then came the girls' weekends, with coworkers I'd never met or heard mentioned before. "You wouldn't know Jennifer," she'd say dismissively when I asked. "She works in the Phoenix office. We connected at the last conference." Around this time, her spending habits changed dramatically. Our joint credit card showed charges at high-end restaurants on nights she claimed to be working late. Expensive spa treatments appeared on statements, along with clothing purchases from boutiques we'd never been able to afford before. "I'm just treating myself," she said when I brought it up. "I work hard, and the company's giving me a bonus for the Anderson account." One evening, we were having dinner with our friends Blake and Georgia, a couple we'd known since college. Throughout the meal, Melissa seemed distracted, constantly checking her phone under the table. "Everything okay?" I asked after the third time. "Just work," she muttered, but her cheeks flushed slightly. Before dessert arrived, she suddenly announced she needed to leave. "Client emergency," she explained, gathering her things. "You stay and enjoy. I'll take an Uber." Blake raised an eyebrow at me after she left. "Is everything okay with you too?" "Just busy with work," I replied automatically, but a knot was forming in my stomach. Later that week, while doing laundry, I found a receipt in her jacket pocket from a hotel downtown. The date matched a night she'd claimed to be at a marketing dinner. I stood there, staring at the paper, trying to come up with innocent explanations. Maybe the dinner was at the hotel. Maybe she'd picked up a client staying there. But the seed of doubt had been planted. I called Curtis the next day and met him for beers after work. Curtis had been my friend since college, and he knew both of us well. "I think something's going on with Melissa," I admitted after my second beer. "Like what?" Curtis asked cautiously. I shared my observations, the odd behaviors, the unexplained expenses, the secrecy. "That does sound weird," he acknowledged. "But maybe it's just stress? Or maybe she's planning something for your anniversary?" I wanted to believe that. Maybe I'm overthinking it. "Look, Trevor, you and Melissa have been solid for years. Don't jump to conclusions based on a hotel receipt. Talk to her." I nodded, but the conversation didn't ease my concerns. The next morning, I got up early and made Melissa breakfast in bed, something I hadn't done in months. As she ate, I casually asked about her upcoming week. "Any more trips planned?" She stiffened almost imperceptibly. "Actually, yes. I need to go to Portland for a few days next week. New client pitch." "Which client?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "It's confidential until we sign them," she replied, not meeting my eyes. "You know how it is." I didn't know how it was in her industry, but something felt off. Later that day, while Melissa was in the shower, I noticed a text notification pop up on her phone. I'd never been the type to snoop, but something compelled me to look. The message preview simply read, "Can't wait to see you next week. D." My stomach dropped. Who was D? I fought the urge to open the message and read the entire conversation. That wasn't who I was. Instead, I confronted her when she got out of the shower. "Who's D?" I asked directly. She froze momentarily, then recovered. "Dominic from work. He's on the Portland pitch team." It sounded reasonable, but her momentary panic told me everything I needed to know. Over the next few weeks, I noticed more red flags. Melissa started criticizing my career choices, suggesting I wasn't ambitious enough. "You could be making twice what you are now if you pushed harder," she said during dinner one night. "Look at Kenneth in your department. He just got that promotion you should have had." This was new. She'd always been supportive of my career path, understanding that I valued work-life balance over climbing the corporate ladder at any cost. Her appearance changed too. New hairstyle, more makeup, a complete wardrobe overhaul. She joined a new gym and was suddenly obsessed with fitness, waking up at 5 a.m. for spin classes. "Just taking care of myself," she said when I commented on these changes. "Don't you want me to look good?" Of course I did, but this didn't feel like changes for herself or for us. It felt like changes for someone else. Her social circle shifted as well. Friends we'd had for years were suddenly boring or stuck in a rut. She started spending time with people from work I'd never met, coming home late from happy hours smelling of expensive cologne that wasn't mine. One night, I woke up at 2 a.m. to find her side of the bed empty. I went downstairs and found her in the kitchen, typing intently on her laptop. When she noticed me, she quickly closed it. "Just finishing up some work," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Go back to bed." Instead of confronting her, I simply nodded and returned upstairs, my heart pounding. The next day, I checked our browser history and found it had been cleared. Melissa never cleared the browser history. She didn't even know how to do that without my showing her previously. I began paying more attention to her schedule, noting discrepancies and inconsistencies. Client meetings that couldn't be verified. Late nights with no explanation. Weekend work sessions that her coworker Alicia knew nothing about when she called looking for Melissa. "I thought she was with you," Alicia said, confusion evident in her voice. "She told the office she was taking personal time this weekend." The pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. After months of gathering fragments of evidence and battling my own denial, I finally decided to face reality. If Melissa was having an affair, I needed to know for certain. The constant suspicion was eating me alive, turning me into someone I didn't recognize, paranoid, anxious, constantly checking her location and scrutinizing every word she said. One morning, while Melissa was in the shower, I noticed a second phone charging in her nightstand drawer. I'd never seen it before. It was password protected, of course. When she came out of the bathroom, I held it up. "What's this?" I asked. She didn't miss a beat. "Work phone. They issued new ones for the executive team. Better security." It sounded plausible, but her eyes darted away when she reached for it. I handed it over without comment, but that phone was the final straw. The next day, I contacted a private investigator named Simon whom a colleague had used during his divorce. Simon was professional and matter-of-fact. "What exactly are you looking to find out, Mr. Walsh?" "I think my wife is having an affair," I said, the words burning my throat as I spoke them aloud for the first time. "I need to know for sure." He nodded, no judgment in his expression. "I'll need some information to start. Her schedule, photos, the name of any suspected individuals." I provided everything I had, including the mysterious D from the text messages and the dates of her upcoming business trip to Portland. A week later, Simon called me at work. "I have some information for you. Can you meet today?" We met at a coffee shop across town, where Simon handed me a manila envelope. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Inside were photos of Melissa and a man I'd never seen before. Tall, expensively dressed, mid-40s. They were holding hands, kissing in a restaurant, entering a hotel together. The dates and timestamps matched days she told me she was working late or at events with colleagues. "His name is Dominic Reeves," Simon explained. "Financial advisor at Carlton Wealth Management. They'd been meeting regularly for at least 8 months, based on my investigation." 8 months. While I was caring for my dying grandfather, while I was grieving his loss, while I was including her in every aspect of my life and inheritance planning. "There's more," Simon said, his voice gentle. "Reeves has a history. He specializes in high-net-worth clients, particularly those who've recently come into money. Inheritance, lottery winnings, that sort of thing." "How do you know that?" I asked, my mouth dry. "Because he's been investigated twice for seducing wealthy clients, or their spouses. No charges were ever filed, but he was let go from his previous firm over ethical concerns." Simon slid another paper across the table. "He's been working with your wife on financial matters. They've had several meetings at his office, according to my sources." The realization hit me like a physical blow. This wasn't just about sex or emotion. This was calculated. Melissa had connected with this man because of my inheritance. "What do I do now?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "That depends on what you want," Simon replied. "If you're considering divorce, you need to protect your assets immediately. I can recommend a good attorney." I nodded numbly, paid Simon for his services, and left with the envelope of evidence tucked under my arm. That afternoon, I called Walter Bryce, the financial advisor Harold had worked with for decades. Walter had helped settle the estate and had been guiding me through managing the inheritance. "Trevor, good to hear from you," Walter said warmly. "How can I help?" "I need to talk about protecting my inheritance," I said. "My marriage, it's not what I thought it was." There was a pause. "Come to my office tomorrow morning. First thing." Walter was in his 70s, with a lifetime of experience not just in finance but in human nature. When I showed him Simon's report, he sighed deeply. "I've seen this before," he said. "More times than I care to remember. When money enters the picture, people change. Or rather, their true nature is revealed." "What can I do?" I asked. "Most of the inheritance is already in our joint accounts. Melissa insisted we combine everything for tax purposes." Walter's expression grew serious. "That was a mistake, but we can fix it. Here's what we need to do immediately." Over the next 2 hours, Walter outlined a strategy to protect my grandfather's legacy. First, we would create a revocable trust in my name only, with specific conditions that would make it difficult for Melissa to access. Second, we would move the bulk of the assets into this trust, leaving only a moderate amount in the joint accounts. She'll notice, I pointed out. Yes, but we can create a digital paper trail that makes it appear the money is still accessible to both of you. A shadow account, if you will. If she's working with this Dominic character, they'll see what we want them to see. Walter connected me with Raymond Lee, the attorney who had handled Harold's estate. Raymond specialized in asset protection and immediately grasped the severity of the situation. Don't confront her yet, Raymond advised during our meeting that afternoon. We need everything in place first. Once she knows you're onto her, she might move quickly. Over the next 2 weeks, I worked with Walter and Raymond to secure my inheritance while maintaining a normal facade at home. We created the trust, transferred assets, and established the shadow account that would appear active to anyone checking. Raymond also helped me prepare divorce papers, ready to be filed when the time came. Oregon is an equitable distribution state, he explained. Given the circumstances and the fact that the inheritance was specifically left to you, we have a strong case for keeping those assets separate from marital property. During this time, I maintained my routine with Melissa, pretending everything was normal while dying inside. Each kiss goodbye in the morning, each casual, love you, text, each night spent lying beside her in bed felt like a knife twisting in my chest. I also had Simon continue his investigation, digging deeper into Dominic Reeves' background and documenting every meeting between him and Melissa. The evidence piled up, undeniable and devastating. One evening, Simon called with new information. They're planning a trip together. 2 weeks at a resort in Bali. She's told her office it's a yoga retreat for stress management. When? I asked. They leave next Friday. Separate flights, meeting there. He booked under his name, premium villa, all expenses. The timing made sense. Melissa had mentioned the yoga retreat weeks ago, describing it as an opportunity to reset and find her center. I'd been supportive, thinking she was dealing with work stress. Simon continued, based on their communications, they're planning something big. There was mention of making changes and new beginnings after this trip. My blood ran cold. They were planning to take the money and run. There's one more thing, Simon added hesitantly. Reeves has done this before. Successfully. His last victim was the wife of a tech executive in California. She emptied their accounts while on vacation, filed for divorce from overseas, and they never recovered the money. It was moved through offshore accounts before anyone realized what happened. That night, I could barely look at Melissa as she packed for her retreat, carefully selecting clothing that looked nothing like what you'd wear to yoga sessions. I'm so excited for this, she said, smiling at me. I really need the break. I forced myself to smile back. You deserve it. Little did she know, everything was in place. The trap was set. All that remained was for her to make her move. The morning Melissa left for her yoga retreat, I drove her to the airport. She kissed me goodbye at the departure drop-off, promising to come back renewed. Take care of yourself while I'm gone, she said, squeezing my hand. Don't work too hard. I watched her walk away, rolling her expensive new luggage that I'd never seen before, and felt a strange mixture of grief and anticipation. Part of me still hoped I was wrong, that Simon's evidence was somehow misleading, that there was an explanation that wouldn't destroy our 12 years together. Drive safely, she called with a final wave, and then she was gone. Simon confirmed later that day that she had boarded her flight to Bali, and that Dominic had departed from Los Angeles on a separate flight. Within 24 hours, they were together at the Amara Villa Resort, checked into a private beachfront bungalow under his name. The first few days of her absence were surreal. The house felt both emptier and lighter without her presence. I focused on work, met with Raymond to review our preparations one final time, and waited. Walter had set up alerts that would notify me of any unusual activity in our accounts. On the 5th day of her trip, at 3:15 in the morning my time, the email arrived. Trevor, I've been doing a lot of thinking during this retreat, and I've come to some difficult realizations. Our marriage isn't fulfilling me anymore, and hasn't been for some time. I've found someone who truly appreciates me, who sees my worth and potential in ways you never did. I've decided to make a clean break. I've transferred your inheritance funds from our joint account into my personal account for safekeeping until the divorce is finalized. Don't worry about trying to contest this. My lawyer assures me that as your spouse, I'm entitled to half of everything, including your inheritance since we commingled the funds. I won't be returning home. I'll have my things collected next week. Please don't try to contact me directly. My lawyer will be in touch regarding next steps. I hope someday you'll understand this is for the best. We've grown apart, and we both deserve happiness. Melissa. Despite knowing it was coming, despite all the preparation, the email hit me like a physical blow. I sat in the dark of our home office, reading and rereading her cold words, feeling 12 years of my life crumble around me. This wasn't just betrayal. It was the calculated destruction of everything we'd built together, everything I'd believed in. With shaking hands, I typed my response. Thanks for letting me know. 4 words that revealed nothing of the storm inside me, nothing of what was coming her way. I forwarded the email to Raymond immediately, then called my brother Benjamin despite the early hour. She did it, I said when he answered groggily. She actually did it. I'll be right over, Benjamin said without hesitation. My brother had been my confidant through this entire ordeal, the only family member I trusted with the full truth. While waiting for him, I sat in Harold's old armchair that I'd moved into our house after he passed. I could almost hear his voice. Money doesn't make you happy, but it gives you options. He'd been trying to warn me all along, in his own way. He'd seen something in Melissa that I'd been blind to. Perhaps that's why he'd insisted on those specific clauses in his will, the ones that had seemed unnecessary at the time. Benjamin arrived with coffee and breakfast sandwiches at 6 a.m. How are you holding up? He asked, concern etched on his face. I don't even know, I admitted. I knew it was coming, but actually seeing it in writing. He nodded, understanding. Did you check the accounts? I pulled up the banking app on my phone. Sure enough, there had been multiple attempted transfers from what Melissa believed was our main joint account, where the bulk of the inheritance had initially been deposited. The shadow account Walter had set up showed a zero balance now. She thinks she got it all, I said, a grim satisfaction cutting through my pain. 3.8 million, gone with a few clicks. Benjamin whistled low. And the real money? Safe in the trust. She has no idea it exists. I ran my hands through my hair. I keep thinking about the last 12 years, trying to figure out if any of it was real. Did she ever love me? Was this the plan all along? Don't torture yourself with those questions, Benjamin advised. You'll never know for sure, and it doesn't change where you are now. Throughout that day, I cycled through every emotion imaginable. Devastation gave way to rage, then to a hollow emptiness, then back to rage again. I reviewed old photos, remembering trips and anniversaries, searching for signs I'd missed. Had her smile always held that calculation? Had her eyes always avoided mine when she said, I love you? I remembered how supportive she'd seemed during Harold's illness and after his death. Had that all been an act, a performance designed to ensure she'd have access to the inheritance? The thought made me physically ill. She was playing the long game, Simon had said when he showed me the evidence of the affair. 8 months is just what we can confirm. The groundwork might have been laid much earlier. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining Melissa and Dominic celebrating in their luxury villa, toasting their success with champagne, laughing about how easy it had been to fool me. Did she tell him about our inside jokes? Did she share intimate details of our life together? Did she sleep with him in the same positions she'd claimed were special between us? The next morning, Walter called. The attempts to transfer funds have continued, he reported. 6 separate tries overnight, gradually decreasing in amount. She's getting desperate. What happens next? I asked. Based on the pattern, she'll contact her lawyer today when she realizes the transfers aren't going through. That's when Phase 2 begins. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Phase 2 was when Melissa would discover that her actions constituted attempted theft and fraud, documented in meticulous detail. The email itself was a confession, admitting her intent to take money that legally belonged to me. For the rest of that day, I moved through my house like a ghost, touching objects that held memories now tainted. The kitchen where we'd cooked together countless meals. The living room where we'd watched movies wrapped in the same blanket. The photographs on the walls capturing moments I'd thought were genuine. In one, taken on our 10th anniversary, Melissa was looking at me instead of the camera, her expression so loving that it had brought tears to my eyes when I first saw it. Now I wondered if she'd been calculating even then, playing a part, waiting for the right opportunity. Benjamin came back that evening with takeout and a bottle of whiskey. "Any updates?" he asked. "Not yet," I replied. "But Raymond says to expect something tomorrow." We ate in relative silence, the food tasteless to me. Afterward, Benjamin insisted on staying over. "You shouldn't be alone right now," he said. That night, lying in the guest room because I couldn't bear to sleep in our bed, I finally allowed myself to fully feel the pain I'd been managing so carefully. I cried for the first time since receiving her email, deep, wrenching sobs that felt torn from my very core. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the future we'd planned together, for the children we'd talked about having someday. But mostly, I cried for the man I had been just 6 months ago, trusting and open-hearted, who believed in the goodness of the woman he married. That man was gone now, replaced by someone warier, someone who understood that love could be weaponized and trust exploited. As dawn broke, I made a promise to myself and to Harold's memory. I would not let this break me. I would not let Melissa and Dominic take anything more from me than they already had. They might have stolen my past, but they would not determine my future. I showered, dressed in my best suit, and prepared to face whatever the day would bring. The trap had been set. Now it was time to spring it. Long before Melissa had left for Bali, I'd been meticulously constructing the perfect trap with Raymond and Walter's guidance. The key was creating an illusion convincing enough to fool both Melissa and Dominic, who as a financial advisor would be scrutinizing everything carefully. 3 weeks before her retreat, I had met with Raymond to execute the most critical part of our plan. "We need to create a convincing paper trail," Raymond explained in his office. "When they investigate, and they will, everything needs to appear legitimate on the surface." With Raymond's guidance, we created a decoy account at Pacific Northwest Bank, ostensibly holding the bulk of my inheritance. In reality, this account contained only $50,000, a convincing bait that would appear active and legitimate to anyone checking. "The real funds have already been moved to the irrevocable trust," Raymond confirmed, showing me the documentation. "Once funds are in this type of trust, they're untouchable by anyone but you as the designated beneficiary. Not even a spouse can access them during divorce proceedings." I nodded, reviewing the paperwork. "And Melissa won't find any trace of this trust?" "The trust was established in Delaware through a separate law firm with no connection to the estate proceedings. Unless she hires a forensic accountant and gets a court order, which would take months, there's no way for her to know it exists." The next step had been meeting with Howard Chin, the manager at our local bank branch where we'd held joint accounts for years. "Mr. Walsh, I understand your concerns," Howard said after I'd explained the situation, careful to frame it as protection against potential identity theft rather than spousal fraud. "We can set up security measures that require in-person verification for any transfers over $10,000. Would my wife be notified of this change?" I asked. Howard shook his head. "Not automatically, no. As a joint account holder, you have the right to implement security features without notification." With that safeguard in place, I had worked with Walter to create a digital trail that would lead Melissa to the decoy account. We made sure that account statements, emails from wealth management, and other breadcrumbs were visible enough that she would find them if she went looking, which Simon had confirmed she was doing regularly on my laptop when I wasn't home. The recording software has been installed, Simon reported, showing me footage of Melissa searching through my emails and documents late at night. It's capturing everything she does on your home computer. This evidence would be crucial later, documenting her premeditated intent to access my inheritance without consent. The final piece had been consulting with Roland Parker, a digital security expert from my company. Without revealing my personal situation, I'd asked him to review our systems for vulnerabilities. Your home network has multiple unauthorized access attempts, Roland noted, showing me the logs. Someone's been trying to access your cloud storage and financial apps repeatedly. Can you trace it? I asked, already knowing the answer. IP address traces back to Carlton Wealth Management, Roland confirmed, looking puzzled. Why would they be trying to access your personal accounts? I'd feigned surprise and asked him to implement additional security while leaving specific vulnerabilities intact, creating a channel that would appear exploitable but would actually document every attempt at unauthorized access. Now, the day after Melissa's email confession, all these preparations were about to pay off. At precisely 9:17 a.m., Walter called. "It's happening," he said without preamble. "Her lawyer just contacted the bank to verify the transfer attempts. They're being directed to Howard as we planned." Howard would explain that the transfers had been flagged as potentially fraudulent due to their size and the fact they were initiated from overseas. He would require additional verification, including in-person identification, before releasing any funds. At 10:30 a.m., Raymond called next. "Her lawyer, Russell Davidson, just contacted me. He's fishing for information about the inheritance accounts." I expressed appropriate concern about the overseas transfer attempts and suggested we all meet when Ms. Walsh returns to discuss the matter civilly. I could imagine Melissa's panic growing by the hour. She'd promised Dominic nearly $4 million, money that would set them up for a new life together. Now that money seemed to be locked behind security measures she hadn't anticipated. "What's her next move likely to be?" I asked Raymond. "Based on my experience, she'll cut her trip short and return to try to fix this personally. Davidson is good, but he can only do so much remotely, especially with the security flags Howard has raised." By early afternoon, the alert system Walter had set up pinged with new activity. Multiple login attempts to our online banking from the IP address in Bali, each trying different security question answers and password combinations. Simon called an hour later. "She's booked a flight back. Leaving tonight, arriving tomorrow afternoon. Dominic is staying behind for now." Everything was unfolding exactly as predicted. The predator had become the prey. That evening, I met with my entire legal team at Raymond's office to prepare for Melissa's return. Evidence was organized chronologically: Simon's investigation results, the documented unauthorized access attempts, the recorded computer sessions showing Melissa searching my financial information, and of course, her damning email confession. "We have 3 options," Raymond explained, laying out documents on the conference table. First, criminal charges for attempted theft and wire fraud. The evidence is substantial, and the confession in writing makes it an almost certain conviction. The thought of Melissa in prison produced conflicted feelings. Despite everything, some part of me still cared for the woman I thought I'd known. Second option, Raymond continued. Civil action for the attempted theft, emotional damages, and legal costs. Less severe than criminal charges but still consequential. And the third? I asked. Use this as leverage for a clean divorce on your terms. She signs away any claim to the inheritance or other assets beyond what she brought into the marriage, admits fault, and you both walk away. No criminal record for her, but she gets nothing. I considered the options carefully. Let's prepare for all 3. I want to see her reaction when she realizes what's happening before deciding. The next morning, I met with Benjamin for breakfast to center myself before the confrontation. Are you ready for this? He asked, studying my face. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied. I just want it over with. Remember, Benjamin said, gripping my shoulder. No matter what she says, no matter how she tries to manipulate you, You have the truth on your side. Don't let her turn this around on you. I nodded, grateful for his support. I won't. At 2:40 p.m., Simon texted that Melissa's flight had landed. By 4 p.m., her Uber was approaching our neighborhood. I sat in Harold's armchair in the living room, a position chosen carefully on Raymond's advice, placing me in the power position as she entered. When the front door opened, I was ready. The lock turned, and Melissa stepped into the house looking exhausted but determined. Her expression shifted instantly from purposeful to shocked when she saw me sitting calmly in the living room. "Trevor," she stammered. "I thought you'd be at work." "Hello, Melissa," I said, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "How was the yoga retreat?" She hesitated, recalibrating. I could almost see the gears turning as she decided which version of herself to present. After a moment, she settled on righteous indignation. "I think my email was pretty clear," she said, straightening her posture. "I didn't expect to have this conversation in person, but since we're here, we might as well get it over with." "Your email was very clear," I agreed. "Particularly the part about transferring my inheritance to your personal account. How's that working out for you?" Her eyes narrowed. "There seems to be some kind of technical issue with the bank. My lawyer is handling it." "Russell Davidson." I nodded. "He's been in contact with my attorney, Raymond Lee. You remember Raymond from the reading of Harold's will, don't you?" Something flickered across her face, uncertainty perhaps. "What's going on, Trevor? Why don't you sit down?" I suggested, gesturing to the couch across from me. "You must be tired after rushing back from Bali. Quite a long flight to cut short a luxury vacation with Dominic Reeves." The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about? Please, Melissa. Let's not waste time with denials. I know everything. The affair, the planning, the attempts to steal my inheritance. I've known for months." She sank onto the couch, her designer handbag clutched in white-knuckled fingers. For a moment she seemed at a loss for words, a rarity for Melissa who always had a ready response. Then her expression hardened. "If you've been spying on me, that's going to look very bad in divorce court," she said, attempting to regain control of the situation. "My lawyer will have a field day with that." I smiled without humor. "Your lawyer might be a bit preoccupied with the criminal charges being prepared against you right now. Wire fraud, attempted theft, unauthorized computer access, the list goes on." "Criminal charges?" she scoffed, but I could see the first flicker of real fear in her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm your wife. Half of everything is mine by law. That's not how inheritance works in Oregon, as I'm sure Russell has explained by now. But even if it were, what you attempted goes far beyond a misunderstanding of marital property law." I reached for the folder on the side table and removed Simon's report, complete with photographs of her and Dominic together spanning months, financial records showing her attempts to access my accounts, and transcripts of her communications planning the theft. "Would you like to see the evidence?" I asked, holding out the folder. "There's quite a lot of it." Melissa didn't take it. She stared at the folder as if it might bite her. "You had me investigated?" "By who?" "Simon Blackwood. He's very thorough. He documented your affair from the beginning, including your first meeting with Dominic at that financial seminar you attended right after Harold's funeral. Rather opportune timing, wasn't it?" Her breath caught. "Trevor, you don't understand. It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like?" I asked, genuine curiosity breaking through my controlled demeanor. "Help me understand how my wife of 12 years could betray me so completely." Melissa's eyes darted around the room as if searching for an escape route. Finding none, she attempted a new strategy. Her posture softened, and tears welled in her eyes, the same tears I'd seen when I proposed, when Harold died, when she told me she loved me. "I made a terrible mistake," she said, her voice breaking. "I was confused, unhappy. Dominic caught me at a vulnerable moment and manipulated me. He convinced me to do things I never would have done otherwise. Like access my computer at night to search for financial information? I asked. Like make 6 separate attempts to transfer my inheritance to your personal account? He pressured me. She insisted, a tear sliding down her cheek. I was afraid of him. If you knew the things he threatened. I cut her off. Don't. Just don't. I have recordings, Melissa. Of you, on this very couch, telling Dominic how you were going to, and I quote, clean out the naive bastard and disappear. That was 3 weeks ago, the night you thought I was working late. The tears vanished instantly, replaced by cold fury. You recorded me in my own home? That's illegal. Actually, it's not. Oregon is a one-party consent state for recordings. But more importantly, this is my home. The deed is in my name alone. Another detail you overlooked. Her face contorted with rage. You arrogant asshole. You think you're so clever, setting traps and playing detective. Do you have any idea who you're dealing with? I thought I was dealing with my loving wife. I replied quietly. I was wrong about that. Now I'm dealing with a thief and a liar. Melissa stood abruptly. I want to call my lawyer. Feel free, I said, gesturing to her phone. While you're at it, you might want to ask him about the status of those transfer attempts. I'm particularly curious about what explanation you gave for trying to move $3.8 million without my knowledge or consent. She ignored this and dialed, stepping into the kitchen for privacy. I could hear her heated whispers, punctuated by occasional outbursts. What do you mean, inadmissible? How can that be theft if I'm his wife? No, you don't understand, I need that money now. When she returned, her composed mask had slipped completely, revealing naked panic. This isn't over, she hissed. Actually, it is, I said, standing to face her directly for the first time. Raymond is waiting at his office with divorce papers ready. We have 2 options. You can sign them today, admitting fault and relinquishing all claims to my inheritance and most marital assets, or I can press criminal charges and let the justice system decide your fate. You wouldn't dare, she challenged, but uncertainty wavered in her voice. Wouldn't I? You stole 12 years of my life, Melissa. You pretended to love me while planning to rob me blind. You cozied up to my grandfather on his deathbed knowing you would try to steal his legacy the moment it passed to me. Tell me why I should show you any mercy. Her lip trembled, not with fake tears this time but with genuine fear. What do the divorce papers say exactly? You get your car, your personal belongings, and a settlement of $50,000. You admit to adultery and attempted theft. You sign a non-disclosure agreement about our marriage and divorce. In exchange, I don't press charges that could send you to prison for up to 10 years. $50,000? She exploded. After 12 years? That's insulting. It's $50,000 more than you deserve. I replied evenly. And significantly better than what you'd have in prison. She paced the living room, muttering under her breath. Finally, she stopped and faced me. What about Dominic? Is he implicated in these supposed charges? Extensively, I confirmed. Wire fraud conspiracy carries substantial penalties. His past behavior with other wealthy clients establishes a pattern that prosecutors love. This seemed to deflate her final resistance. Dominic, it appeared, had been her safety net. Now that he faced legal jeopardy as well, I could almost see her calculating her diminishing options. I need to think, she said finally. You have until 5 p.m. tomorrow, I replied. After that, Raymond files the criminal complaints. She gathered her purse with shaking hands. I need to collect some things. Your clothes and personal items only, I specified. Benjamin and Georgia are upstairs to supervise. Anything of questionable ownership stays until determined by the court. Her eyes widened at the mention of our friends. Georgia knows about this? Everyone knows, Melissa. Did you think I'd keep your betrayal a secret? The humiliation of this realization seemed to hit her harder than any legal threat. Her carefully cultivated social image, the respected marketing executive with the perfect marriage, was shattered. She moved woodenly toward the stairs, where Benjamin and Georgia waited to monitor her packing. Before she ascended, she turned back to me with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of hatred and something that might have been respect. "You've changed," she said. "Yes," I agreed. "Thanks to you." After she left with a suitcase of clothes and a box of personal items, the house fell into blessed silence. Benjamin and Georgia came downstairs, both looking drained. "She tried to take your grandmother's silver," Georgia reported. "And the art piece from your Tokyo trip." I nodded, unsurprised. "Thank you both for being here. I couldn't have faced this alone." Benjamin gripped my shoulder. "You didn't just face it. You conquered it." The next afternoon, Raymond called. "She's here. With her lawyer." I drove to his office, a strange calm settling over me. When I entered the conference room, Melissa sat beside Russell Davidson, looking diminished in a way I'd never seen before. "Ms. Walsh has agreed to the terms," Raymond announced without preamble. "The papers are ready for signatures." Russell looked deeply unhappy. "Under protest, I should note. My client feels coerced by the threat of criminal charges." "Your client confessed to theft in writing and was documented making multiple unauthorized transfer attempts," Raymond replied coolly. "She's fortunate Mr. Walsh is offering this alternative." The signing took less than 15 minutes. Melissa didn't meet my eyes once, scrawling her signature on page after page in silence. When it was done, she stood immediately. "One last thing," she said, finally looking at me. "Dominic called this morning. When I told him about the $50,000 settlement, he said not to bother coming back to Bali." With that parting shot, she walked out of Raymond's office and out of my life. Later that evening, I received a call from Melissa's parents, Frank and Margaret. They had always treated me like a son, and the pain in Margaret's voice was palpable. "Trevor, we just heard," she said. "We're so sorry. We had no idea Melissa could do something like this." "Neither did I replied honestly. "We want you to know," Frank added, his voice gruff with emotion. "You're still family to us, no matter what. Melissa's actions are her own, and we don't condone them for a second." Their support meant more than they could know, a reminder that not everything in the past 12 years had been a lie. As I hung up, I gazed around the house that now felt truly mine again. The trap had sprung perfectly, justice had been served, but the victory felt hollow in many ways. I had protected my grandfather's legacy and my financial future, but the emotional damage couldn't be undone with clever legal maneuvers. That would take time, and a different kind of strength. The months following the divorce were both the hardest and most transformative of my life. With Melissa gone and legal matters settled, I was left alone with the aftermath of betrayal. The house, once filled with memories both genuine and falsified, felt too large and empty for just one person. For the first few weeks, I moved through my days like an automaton, going to work, coming home, eating whatever Benjamin or Karen dropped off, and falling into restless sleep plagued by dreams of Melissa laughing at my naivety. The divorce had been quick, thanks to the irrefutable evidence and Melissa's desire to avoid criminal charges, but the emotional untangling would take much longer. "You need to talk to someone professional," my sister Karen insisted during one of her check-in visits. "This isn't something you can just power through alone." I resisted initially, clinging to the illusion that strength meant handling everything independently. But after a particularly difficult night when I found myself staring at old wedding photos at 3 a.m., I finally made the call Karen had been urging. Dr. Amelia Foster specialized in betrayal trauma, and from our first session, she offered perspectives I hadn't considered. "What you're experiencing isn't just heartbreak," she explained gently. "It's a fundamental breach of your basic assumptions about life, relationships, and your own judgment. That's why it feels so disorienting." Week by week, I unpacked the relationship with Amelia's guidance. We explored how Melissa had exploited my trusting nature, how the death of my parents had created a deep yearning for stability that made me vulnerable, and how Harold had seen warning signs I'd missed. "Your grandfather tried to protect you," Amelia noted. "Not just financially, but emotionally. He recognized something in Melissa that concerned him." Why couldn't I see it? I asked, the question that had haunted me for months. Because you weren't supposed to, she replied. Skilled manipulators excel at presenting exactly what their targets want to see. Your ability to trust isn't a weakness, Trevor. It's a strength that was exploited. 3 months into therapy, I made a decision that surprised even me. I decided to use part of my inheritance to establish a scholarship fund in Harold's name at the university where he had taught for 40 years. The Harold Walsh Scholarship for Ethical Leadership would support students demonstrating both academic excellence and strong moral character. Melissa tried to steal this money for selfish purposes. I told Walter as we set up the foundation. This feels like the perfect way to honor Harold's legacy instead. Walter smiled, genuine pride in his eyes. Harold would love this. He always said education was the best investment. Creating the scholarship helped reconnect me with my grandfather's values and vision. I met with university officials, helped design the selection criteria, and even participated in choosing the first recipients. Seeing bright young students benefiting from Harold's legacy brought a sense of purpose back into my life. Gradually, I began rebuilding my social connections as well. The divorce had revealed who my true friends were. Some mutual acquaintances had drifted toward Melissa, seduced by her charismatic version of events. Others had stood firmly by me, offering support without judgment. Curtis organized regular guys' nights that pulled me out of isolation. Georgia checked in frequently, bringing home cooked meals and practical advice. Benjamin and Karen tag-teamed to ensure I never spent holidays alone. And to my surprise, Frank and Margaret maintained their relationship with me, inviting me to family gatherings despite Melissa's absence. You're still our son in our hearts, Margaret told me during a Sunday dinner at their home. What Melissa did doesn't change that. 6 months after the divorce, I met with Walter to develop a comprehensive financial plan for my future. The inheritance remained secure in the trust, growing steadily under Walter's management. What are your goals now? Walter asked as we reviewed the portfolio. I considered the question carefully. Security, of course. But also purpose. I want this money to mean something beyond just financial stability. Together, we created a balanced approach, prudent investments for long-term growth, expanded funding for the scholarship, and strategic philanthropy supporting causes Harold had cared about. Around this time, I received unexpected news from Simon. Dominic Reeves had attempted his scheme again with another wealthy client, but this time had been caught and charged. During the investigation, authorities had uncovered evidence linking him to multiple similar frauds, including his relationship with Melissa. They may contact you as a potential witness, Simon informed me. But even if they don't, I thought you'd want to know he's facing serious time. The news brought complicated emotions. Part of me felt vindicated, while another part simply felt sad for all the lives Dominic had damaged, including, in some ways, Melissa's. She had been both perpetrator and victim in her own way, though that didn't excuse her choices. As the 1-year anniversary of the divorce approached, I made another significant decision. I sold the house, unable to fully reclaim it from the shadows of deception that lingered in every room. The real estate market had strengthened, and the sale brought a substantial profit that I used to purchase a smaller, modern condo overlooking the river. New space, new chapter, Karen said approvingly as she helped me move in. The condo represented more than just a change of address. It symbolized my conscious choice to move forward rather than remain mired in the past. I furnished it differently, choosing pieces that reflected my tastes rather than the compromised aesthetic Melissa and I had developed. Almost 18 months after the confrontation with Melissa, I received an unexpected letter forwarded through Raymond. The return address was from California, where I'd heard Melissa had relocated after failing to rebuild her career locally. For days, I left it unopened on my kitchen counter, uncertain whether reading it would help or harm my healing process. Finally, during a therapy session, I mentioned it to Amelia. "What are you afraid it might contain?" she asked. "More manipulation," I admitted. "Or worse, something genuine that makes me question everything again." Do you believe anything in that letter could undo the progress you've made? I considered this. No. I don't think so. Then perhaps it's worth reading, if only to confirm how far you've come. That evening, I finally opened Melissa's letter. It was surprisingly brief, only a single page of her distinctive handwriting. Trevor, I don't expect forgiveness or even understanding. What I did was unforgivable. The person I became with Dominic wasn't someone I recognized or respected. Since losing everything, I've had to face some ugly truths about myself and my choices. I won't make excuses. I betrayed you, Harold, and everything our marriage stood for. The consequences have been severe but deserved. I'm writing only to say that I'm sorry, truly sorry, for the pain I caused. You deserve better. I've started therapy and am trying to understand why I was capable of such deception. It doesn't change the past, but maybe it will make me a better person going forward. I wish you healing and happiness. Melissa. I set the letter down, surprised by my own reaction. There was no surge of anger or reopening of wounds, just a quiet acknowledgement. Her apology changed nothing about what had happened, but somehow confirmed that the chapter was truly closed. I didn't respond to the letter. There was nothing more to say. Instead, I placed it in a folder with the other documentation from that period of my life and filed it away, perhaps for good. That summer, at Benjamin's encouragement, I joined a hiking group to meet new people and spend more time outdoors. The group was diverse and welcoming, focused on exploring trails throughout the Pacific Northwest. For the first time in 2 years, I found myself relaxing fully in social situations, no longer scanning for hidden agendas or betrayals waiting to happen. During a challenging hike along the Columbia River Gorge, I found myself walking alongside another member named Diane, a forestry scientist with an encyclopedic knowledge of native plants and a dry sense of humor. Our conversation flowed easily, touching on everything from environmental conservation to our favorite sci-fi authors. When she mentioned growing up with her grandfather after her parents' divorce, I felt an unexpected connection. Would you like to grab coffee sometime? I asked as we reached the trailhead, surprising myself with the spontaneity. Diane smiled. I'd like that. I didn't know if coffee would lead anywhere significant, and for once, that uncertainty didn't trouble me. The future stretched before me, unwritten and full of possibility. Whether it included new love or not, I was moving forward as a stronger, wiser version of myself. Harold had been right all along. Money doesn't make you happy, but it gives you options. In my case, it had revealed a painful truth, then provided the means to rebuild after that truth shattered my world. As I drove home from the hike, I found myself talking aloud to Harold as I sometimes did when processing important moments. I think you'd be proud, Grandpa, I said to the empty car. Not just of how I protected your legacy, but of who I'm becoming because of it all. The setting sun cast golden light across the river as I pulled into my condo's parking garage. Another day ended, another beginning waited. For the first time in a very long time, I felt genuinely hopeful about what tomorrow might bring. Before I close this chapter of my story, I want to ask you, have you ever had to rebuild trust after a major betrayal? What helped you move forward? Share your experiences in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that healing is possible even after the deepest betrayals. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, sometimes the greatest strength comes from surviving what you once thought would destroy you.